our recording and we will go ahead and get started. So thank you again, everyone, for joining today's workshop, Interview with Ease. My name is Erin A. Hart, and I'm joined by Dr. Johnette Ruffner-Caesar, and we are both career counselors serving all graduate students in the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, except for Trachtenberg and Data Science. Those are the two exceptions. We're really excited to be sharing this workshop with you today because we know that in a competitive job market, it can be really easy to let our anxiety and our excitement about a position get the best of us. But in today's workshop, we are going to be sharing how you can interview with ease and confidence, and then we'll also go through some commonly asked interview questions. I'm personally really passionate about this topic because, like every single person out there, I have also had a negative interview experience where I came away from that interview feeling like I could have done so much better. And I was even feeling those feelings of embarrassment and just wishing that the interview went differently. But because of that learning experience, I can bring that into this workshop and share with you how you can be more confident when you go into your next interview. So really excited that you all have joined us for this conversation today. I also want to share that this is just one workshop out of our entire career readiness workshop series. So this semester, Dr. Ruffner-Caesar and I are presenting a theme of workshops on AI, the future of work, and navigating the current job market. And so this is just one of those. And if you enjoy today's workshop, make sure you keep coming back for those other themed workshops as well. But I will get right into it and share a little bit more about myself and my background. Again, my name is Erin A. Hart. My background is in both employer relations and career coaching, so I have experience building relationships with recruiters and employers on the other side of career services. I also host a career development podcast outside of my full-time role here at GW, and in particular, I'm really interested in helping Gen Z make the transition from college to their careers. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Ruffner-Caesar to introduce herself as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. So happy to see you all and see so many folks that I know and have met with. So really great to see you. I am Johnette Ruffner-Caesar. In addition to being a career counselor here at CCAS, I also own a professional services agency where I support mid to senior level career women specifically. And so I really enjoy working with students to hopefully help to share some insights with you that will help you to not encounter what some of my clients encounter. So glad to have you and hope that you will join us for the remainder of our sessions.
Wonderful. And I do see in the chat, we have one person who's introduced themselves in the criminology master's program, says that they would like to become more confident in interview settings. And for those of you who've just joined, we're also asking you to add in the chat what program you're coming to us from and what is one thing that you would like to get out of today's session. So make sure you introduce yourself. This is also all part of building your network. All right. So in today's session, you will learn to answer commonly asked interview questions like what are your strengths and weaknesses and where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you'll also gain helpful interview prep strategies and resources and understand important differences in navigating virtual and in-person interviews, including how to prepare for these interviews. Before we really get into it, I just want to share a couple of resources that you all have available to you. One of those is the Center for Career Services Interview Tips and Practice Resources webpage. So you can see on the screen, it's just careerservices.gwu.edu/interviewing, and all of the interview related resources that you can access as GW students is there on that webpage. And one of the resources that you'll see is VMock. With VMock, you can record your answers to practice interview questions, and it's an AI interview prep platform. You can also use this platform to help AI review your resume. You can also schedule a personalized mock interview with a CCAS career counselor on Handshake. So that would be with myself or Dr. Ruffner-Caesar. So there's nothing special about scheduling this appointment. You're just going to select Career Advising-CCAS, but make sure that at least a couple days ahead of your appointment, you email whichever counselor you schedule an appointment with to share information about the role and organization you're interviewing for. I said at least 24 hours in advance. As much advance notice as you can give us would be great because we can actually create tailored questions based on what we think you might be asked in that upcoming interview, and then do some modeling and talking through your answers and what advice we have. So those are just a couple resources that what I wanted to start out with. But before we get into answering commonly asked interview questions and really the meat of this presentation, let's talk about how to prepare. This is really the most important part. So, what is the purpose of an interview and what kind of interviewing will we be talking about today? Today, we're focusing on behavioral interviews. This is the most common type of interview, and according to the US Chamber of Commerce, behavioral interviews question candidates about their past experiences with the idea that past performance predicts future behavior. So, if there's one phrase that you should absolutely remember and leave this conversation with, it should be that past performance predicts future success. Again, by questioning candidates about their past experience, interviewers can predict how a candidate is going to function, behave, and operate in this future role at their company. I also want you to remember as you prepare, you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. Dr. Ruffner Caesar always shares that you can view an interview as a partnership meeting, and you wouldn't call it that, but in the back of your mind, you're remembering that you're also assessing if this position and organization and team are a good fit for what you're looking for. So the interview is a chance for you to think about how are you treated by the interviewers? How did they answer your questions? And what did you like or dislike about what they shared about the position and the organization? The purpose of the interview, again, is to identify whether you and the company are a good fit for each other. Yes, you're sharing why you are a great candidate for the role, but it really goes both ways. And again, this is really a partnership meeting. So, if an interview is about identifying fit, it is your responsibility to go into this interview knowing the position and company that you're interviewing for. And this is the first and most important step of preparing for the interview. So, know the company and know yourself and what you want. Research the organization and the people who work there. What are their mission and values? You should always, always, always know the mission and values of the organization, which can usually be found on the website in the About section. Who might be a part of your team? What departments exist within the organization? If you're lucky, the people who will be on your team might be listed on the company website as part of their directory. But you can also go on LinkedIn and click on the company webpage and go through the people section of that company to see who currently works there. If it's a large organization, you're going to have to do a lot of digging this way, but there's usually always a way to figure out who the people are who you would be working with. When you look people up on LinkedIn, remember it's a best practice not to connect with them because the interviewers can't show any preference towards a specific candidate. You shouldn't request to connect with the interviewer unless you already have a personal connection with them and maybe worked with them in a past role. Otherwise, they shouldn't be accepting that connection request. Researching the team and your potential department also helps you to know who might be present at your interview, and based on what their role is and what they care about, what kinds of questions you could be asked. It's also completely fine and actually recommended to ask the person who you've been communicating about your interview who might be a part of the hiring committee. I've asked that in past interviews before, and they were happy to share the names of the people who would be on the hiring committee. Next, it's your job to know the job description inside and out. If they ask what you think about a specific aspect of a job, you want to be able to answer that question in full and really have a good understanding of what they're asking you about. You can also use the position requirements to anticipate what kinds of questions they might ask you again, just like you're looking up the people who would be on the hiring committee. For example, if they want someone who is collaborative and a team player and they list this multiple times in the job description, you can probably expect that they're going to ask you to tell them about a time when you worked in a team. Or they might ask you to share your perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion if that's something that they've listed multiple times in their job description. And again, make sure that you know your resume inside and out because I always tell my students everything on your resume is fair game. Maybe they ask you to walk them through your resume at the beginning of an interview, or they notice something that they really find interesting about you in a bullet point that you wrote. Be ready to speak about every single thing that's on that page. How does your experience connect to the job description and what they're looking for in a candidate? And again, the more you can use your experience to check off their mental list of what they're looking for, the better. So, as you're doing this exercise of doing your research, knowing the company, knowing yourself, and starting to make those mental connections of how you're a great fit and how you're in alignment, one exercise that students have found really helpful in the past and that I have actually used in past interviews is to make myself what I call an interview cheat sheet. This isn't cheating, it's just a guide that you have next to you. You probably won't even look at it because you're using this to prepare and write down ahead of time, but I find it really helpful. So you can always have a copy of your resume next to you, whether this is in person or virtual. If the interview is virtual, you have the opportunity to mark that resume up. You can star, underline, or highlight 5 skills or experiences that you want to make sure that you share by the end of your interview. If it's in person and you have a resume next to you, you're not going to mark it up with red pen or use a highlighter, but you can lightly star or circle with a pencil on your own resume, just some things that you want to come back to. You're probably going to be very prepared and you probably won't even have to look at this, but I find that this is helpful just in case you feel like you need that extra sheet to glance down at if you're really struggling to think of an example. Or something that I find with grad students who come in with lots of experience is that they get overwhelmed with all the experience that they have to share. So I challenge students to say, these are my top 5 experiences that I can talk at length about in an interview. There's a good chance, no matter what question I'm asked, one of these experiences is going to be the answer or relate to that question in some way. So I would challenge you after picking out those top 5 experiences or skills that you have to talk about, only talk within those 5 things. Don't try and rake your brain for a better example that happened 3 years ago that you couldn't really provide a lot of detail about. Stick to those 5. If you can talk about those 5 things at length, there's a good chance that they're going to be the answer to any question that they ask you within those 5 experiences. And somewhere on your resume, you can also write down 3 things about the company or job description that resonated with you. I would really only do this on a Zoom interview because, again, you don't want to come in person with a marked up resume. Um, but some things just to remind yourself that you want to comment on during the interview to share that you've done your research and that you know the position well. On the back of your resume, you could also write the 3 to 5 questions that you want to ask an employer after the interview is over. So just another exercise that you can do. This doesn't work for everyone, but at least for me, I feel like it really helps me to organize my brain and organize myself, especially if I'm nervous coming into an interview. It's just something extra that you can do if you would like. Okay. So, when you're preparing for your interview, whether it's in person or virtual, is extremely important in the preparation process. And with that interview cheat sheet that I just provided, that's one example of how your preparation is going to change. So, in virtual interviews, eye contact means actually not looking at the screen that's directly in front of you. It means looking at the webcam when you're speaking. So, I'll do a quick demonstration. Right now, I am reading the words off the screen and I'm looking at the screen, and it looks like I'm looking at your faces, but it doesn't look like I'm looking at you. Versus, again, I'm standing up straight, looking at the webcam also helps with posture. I'm now looking at the webcam and it looks like I am talking to you because I'm looking into the camera. So another thing that I heard a student do to remind them to do this is they took one of those small rectangular sticky notes, drew an arrow on it and drew an arrow towards the webcam and just put it on top of their laptop. So that's just another tip that you can use. On virtual interviews, business casual attire applies where visible, meaning from the waist up. So I'm wearing jeans right now. I'm working from home, but no one would ever know that because I'm wearing a professional attire, a blazer. This would actually be perfect for an interview, and you could wear something like this. Additional requirements, make sure you check your Wi-Fi connection well ahead of time. Make sure you've downloaded and updated the latest version of whatever interview platform they're using, whether it's Zoom, Skype, or another interview platform. Make sure you have a clean, professional looking background. You can blur the background if you're of your apartment or your home, wherever you live, if you don't want them to see it, or you can have a very clean background. No mess in the back, no distractions, no pets or people walking behind you. If you live in an apartment complex, you should be putting a sticky note on your door that says, leave packages outside, do not knock, interview in progress, something like that, because nothing should, impact or distract you during your Zoom interview. And again, try to eliminate noise from roommates, neighbors, and pets as best as you can. Now, for in person, of course, professional attire applies to your full appearance. That includes personal hygiene. And you may think, why would I need to share the personal hygiene piece with grad students? But you'd be surprised. Just make sure that you are showering, wearing deodorant, a little perfume, but not too much, really investing in your appearance, just to show them that you went the extra mile to look and feel your best for this conversation. When making eye contact in person, it's a little different, especially if you have multiple interviewers. You want to give attention to everybody in the room. If you're just looking at one person, the other people around that table will feel excluded, and you want to show that you not only are a great communicator and can speak to everybody in the room, but that you care and you're appreciative of their time by giving them attention with your eye contact as you're speaking and answering your questions. Additional recommendations I have for in-person interviews are bringing printed copies of your resume for every interviewer who you think will be present. You can always just bring 5 printed resumes if you don't know how many people will be in the room. Just again, to show that you're considerate of them and you're thinking about their time and valuing this conversation. To me, as an interviewer, I would always feel really appreciated and valued knowing that someone took the time to bring a printed resume that I can now reference and look over as they're answering questions in person. Make sure you bring a working pen or a pencil and a professional looking notebook. A $2 black 5-star folder would work to keep these resumes in. But you just want to make sure that you also have some place to take notes. And that's why I also like flipping over your resume as an additional place to take notes during the interview. Okay. One of the other most important things that you can do is the mental preparation piece. This is something I am so passionate about because it is one of the most important, if not the most important part of the entire interview, even more important than how you answer the questions. Some things that people do to get mentally prepared is to practice with a trusted mentor or coach. This could be scheduling a mock interview with Dr. Ruffner Caesar or myself. It could be utilizing family and friends. It could be making a playlist on Spotify or Apple Music that either calms or energizes you, whatever you need. I have a playlist that I title Interview Hype Playlist. And if you come into my office and schedule an appointment, I will give you this Interview Hype playlist and share it with you so it can help amp you up for your interview too. Just really songs that are familiar to me that I love that make me feel like I want to dance. And I used to think this advice was really silly, but don't underestimate the power of getting your anxiety out through physical movement, whether that's working out in the morning, dancing in the mirror to this interview hype playlist you have, doing those power poses in the mirror. This is proven to help relieve anxiety and get you in the right mood. And my routine as I prepare for an interview, in the past, I have woken up bright and early, giving myself plenty of time to get prepared. Um, I'm dancing in the mirror. I'm listening to that playlist. I'm making myself a healthy, filling breakfast so my stomach isn't growling in the interview. I have a cup of coffee. Maybe I call my parents or a friend to hype me up. All of these things sound silly, but they are so important to make sure that you go in there feeling your best. And also reward yourself with something to look forward to after your interview. No matter what, if you feel like you don't do as well as you'd hoped, or if you feel like you do an amazing job, this ice cream or this workout or going to a movie or out to dinner with friends, it's either a reward for doing well or it's a reward for trying your best and the learning moment that's come from that interview. Okay. And remember, when I opened up this presentation, I said, I myself, like everyone, have had bad interviews before. It is always okay to pause and take a deep breath before answering a question. Remember, everyone has been nervous for an interview at some point. It won't be a surprise to seasoned interviewers. And remember that you have the right unique qualities that the right company will value, no matter what. If it doesn't work out, it simply was not the right opportunity for you, and another one will come along. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I just want to give us a moment to bring us back, get connected before we talk about answering the most commonly asked interview questions. You can feel free to raise your hand, unmute, put questions in the chat. Okay, no questions yet. We'll also have some time at the end to chat more as well. Okay, so answering commonly asked interview questions. There are just some questions that you are absolutely going to get every time. Those are the ones that we're talking about today. And the first one is, tell me about yourself. This is your chance to make a great first impression. Your answer should be tailored and unique to you. You want to give the interviewer an idea of what you have to offer, hint at some of the amazing experiences that you're about to share. You want to come across as confident, a great communicator, and knowledgeable about yourself and why this position makes sense for you, and adjust to the natural flow of conversation. So let's talk more about what I mean by that. There are some interviews and interviewers who skip right past tell me about yourself and move into, why are you the best fit for this role? Why are you interested in this position? And that's a test. That's a test at your communication skills, or maybe they're simply just not experienced interviewers. But whatever the reason, you always want to start with how you would answer, tell me about yourself, no matter what. So if they start the interview with saying, why are you interested in this position, Erin? I might say, thank you so much. And again, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to interview. I would love to share more about my interest. But first, to give you a better idea of why this role makes sense for me, I would love to share about my background and a little bit about myself. And then I would go into the tell me about yourself answer that I already have prepared. Maybe I'm shortening a little bit. Maybe not speaking for as long as I normally would, because you do have to go back and then answer the question, why are you interested? But I'm still starting with that tell me about yourself answer. It's really important to ease your anxiety by starting the way you plan to start, because that's an easy lift and you already know exactly what you're going to say. So again, when thinking about how to give them an idea of what you have to offer, you want to ask yourself, what do I want to present to the interviewer as part of my first impression? And so how should you do this? One model that you can follow is the present, past, future model. Let's see, I have a question in the chat. I'm going to come back to that later. Follow the present, past, future model. So to start, you would give an overview of your current roles or role, professional history, and where you'd like to go in the future. And then you can take it to the next level by briefly describing how this position fits into your goals, because you don't want to overwhelm them by talking too much up front, and they'll probably ask you more about why you're interested. But you want to talk for about 1 to 2 minutes. And so let's go through an example of how you might follow the present, past, future model. Okay. So tell me about yourself. Hi, my name is Sarah Castle, and I'm currently pursuing a Master of Arts in Anthropology at the George Washington University. I also work part-time for an archaeological resource management firm as an administrative assistant. I've always been fascinated by human history, and I inherited this love from my aunt, who is a middle school history teacher. Growing up, I would talk with her for hours about ancient civilizations and and specifically the tribes native to my home in Connecticut. Through speaking with field technicians in my current position and through writing my master's thesis on 18th and 19th century Eastern Pequot households, my passion for anthropology and specifically archaeology has only deepened, which is why I'm so interested in the archaeological field technician position at Tetra Tech, where I will directly participate in surveying and excavation and ultimately help preserve artifacts that we identify. And again, I'm so excited about this opportunity and look forward to sharing more about why I believe I'm a great fit throughout our conversation today. So you can see how this person, Sarah, started with present. I'm currently a student at GW, then moved on to the past, how she became interested in this field with those conversations with her family member, and then talked about her master's thesis, why she's interested in the role, and where she's going in the future. And she actually, probably could have talked a little bit less about why she was interested. But yeah, to briefly describe your interest at the end and tie it back to the future. Any questions about tell me about yourself? Let's see. One question in the chat is, I thought of a question, had an interview where the company gave me the interview questions in advance. Although this is not typical of companies, it helped me because I felt super prepared and I ended up getting the job. Would it ever hurt to ask for the question in advance, or is this a no-no? Personally, I would not ask for the questions in advance, but I do know that some employers do provide them. Know that when employers provide the interview questions in advance, you are expected to know your stuff and be amazing because you've had this time to prepare. And I'm so happy, Shelby, that you ended up getting the position. That's amazing. Um, but I would prefer not to ask for questions in advance because sometimes it can give the illusion that you're looking for an unfair advantage. You just never know how the employers are going to perceive this on the other side. Some might be really receptive, and for some, this might leave an uncomfortable taste in their mouth because you're asking them to do something that they didn't expect. They might have to go back to HR and say, is this okay? And if we give it to this one candidate, do we have to give it to everybody for equity purposes? So I prefer and I would recommend that you don't ask for them. But of course, if you're given those questions, that's amazing. But remember, you have to be so prepared. They expect that when you have this ahead of time. Okay. Why are you interested in this position? So this is probably going to be asked very shortly after tell me about yourself. Remember when you're answering this question, stay true to yourself and genuinely think, really, why am I genuinely interested? Why do I want to work here? And then you want to mention at least two specifics from the job description, company website, or things you've learned about the company through your network. And you want to make them feel special. Don't be generic. Employers, especially today, when there's so much competition in the current job market, they just want to meet someone and feel so relieved that this person is genuinely interested. They're going to stay in this role because they just invested a lot of time and money, and even investing lots of time just in the interview process alone. They want to feel so relieved that you are the right person for the role. So when you talk about why you're interested in the position, really make it personal, connect it to you, and make them feel special, like you are really invested in this role. Things that you can mention from the just job description or the website, just to give you all some ideas. Maybe it's a shared mission, purpose, or values, talented colleagues who you can learn from and work alongside, aspects of the company culture that you really admire. And you can even explicitly say, I noticed in the job description that ... or while researching your organization's website, I was excited to learn that you value ... What you don't want to say is, I just really need a job. I was laid off or I was fired. I had just have to be employed again. You don't want to say that. Um, you're you're positioning yourself as the best fit. They are lucky to have found you. You don't want to say, I want a salary increase. I want to make X amount of money. And you don't want to say, I don't like my current employer. Your answer should really be oriented around fit and alignment. around why you would absolutely love this job that you're pursuing, or you would love to work at this company, or ideally both. Next up is where do you see yourself in 5 years? But this is also commonly asked as what are your short and long-term career goals? You're really not adjusting your answer too much for the differences in this question. The reason why employers are asking this is because they want to know if you have a vision for yourself. What motivates you? And more importantly, they want to know how does this role fit into your vision for yourself? How are we related to these goals that you have? Because they know that when you're directly invested in your success in this role because it's related to your long-term career goals, that you are more likely to stay in that company and do really great work for them because you have a personal investment. If you don't know what you want to do, you don't have to have it all figured out, but you should know how this position is going to move you in the right direction. So maybe when you're answering, what are your short-term and long-term goals? You could say something like, in the short term, I would love to gain skills in XYZ and apply my current expertise to XYZ area that I know I would get to learn more about in this role. Long term, I'm open to multiple career opportunities, but my overarching interest area is XYZ, and I would love to have this impact at a company in the future. Um, there are lots of ways that you can phrase that if you don't know what you want to do, and you can come and schedule a one-on-one appointment with myself or Dr. Ruffner Caesar to workshop this a little bit more. Okay. What are your strengths and weaknesses? So this one, people get freaked out by it because they never want to reveal a weakness to an employer, but it's actually the easiest question that you could be asked. So for strengths, remember if they're asking you to list strengths and weaknesses, you're listing two because it's plural. Most people just list one strength, one weakness, and forget to list the others. You don't want to do that. Make sure you're really listening to what they're asking for. But for strengths, it doesn't really matter what strengths you give, but know that you have to give an example for each to prove that this is actually a strength you have. For this question, I've noticed people just talk in circles and say that they have a strength, but they're not showing it and they're not telling a story about how this strength was useful or impactful to them. For weaknesses, again, it doesn't really matter what you say, but don't say that you're a perfectionist. That's so overused. You can come up with something else. And don't say you struggle with punctuality, you struggle to show up to work on time, you're lazy, you don't like to work. Not that I think anyone on this call would ever say something like that. But while it doesn't really matter what your weakness is, there are certain parameters and you're trying to paint yourself in a positive light. So just remember that. With your weakness, you're trying to show how you're working to improve yourself. The purpose of them asking this question is to see if you are self-aware. Do you really know yourself and what you're good at and what you're not as strong in? And how do you take the initiative to improve yourself along the way? That's what they're trying to get at. Okay. And actually, one thing I didn't mention is that I'm a Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach. That's why I put this logo on the screen. If you're not sure what strengths to list in an interview, taking this assessment could be a really useful tool to help you get to know what you're really strong in and what you excel in, and could just give you some additional language to think about. So reach out if that's something that interests you as well. But let's talk about some examples. So, Erin, please describe one of your greatest strengths. Great, that's an excellent question. One of my greatest strengths is communication, and in my current role as a teaching assistant, I'm able to demonstrate this when helping students learn the course material in one-on-one meetings with me. I always make sure that I'm clearly explaining the material as if I were learning it myself for the very first time, and I work with students until they truly understand. Because of the way I communicate this knowledge, several students have shared that I have helped improve their understanding of the material, which also makes me feel like I'm making a difference. My communication skills will help me in this new role when providing context and direction to people on my team. So you'll see that at the bottom of this answer, I'm connecting it back to the new role. You always want to remind the employer to see you in that light, see how you're fitting in. And so the reason you're connecting it back to the new job is to help them envision you in this new role. So let's talk about weaknesses. One of my weaknesses is that I have trouble focusing when working independently for long periods of time. Over the years, I've developed strategies to combat this, such as listening to music while I work and working on different tasks throughout the day instead of working on one project for the entire day. Sometimes this isn't an option, so that's when I really tap into my sense of responsibility to be a high performing team member. I always want to do my part, which really motivates me to stay focused. So you can see that when you're sharing how you improve a weakness, you can also mention a positive. So in this answer, I said, I always tap into my sense of responsibility. So you're using your other strengths to combat this weakness and show how you're using them to improve. Okay. Any questions about strengths and weaknesses? All right, so we will move on. So the next one is a collection of answers to the hallmark of the behavioral interview, which is tell me about a time when. Give me an example of a past situation when you did XYZ. So for this one, this is really going back to telling employers how you've handled situations in the past helps them predict how you're going to perform in this future role at their company. And when asked about the past, there's a really simple method that you can follow called the STAR method. Some of you may have heard of this before, but the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, results, and reflection. I know that's a lot, especially if you're nervous. So in my mind, instead, I usually think about listing, okay, I have to say what happened, what was the situation, what I did, what action did I take to improve the situation, and then finally what I learned. So this could be the result that came of it. It could be your reflection on the action you took. What could you learn for next time? How would you apply this to a future role? So what happened? What you did, what you learned. All right, so let's talk through another example here. Tell me about a time when you took initiative. A time when I took initiative was when I was asked to be the music director for a musical in my undergraduate institution's largest student-run musical theater group. I knew that on top of teaching the vocalists and musicians their music, I would have to conduct the pit orchestra, which I had never done before. So I took initiative by reaching out to music students and professors in the School of Music to learn the basics of conducting. And after lots of practice, I conducted the musical and our show won an award for the best show of the spring season. Throughout this process, I learned that the benefit of seeking guidance from seasoned professionals and that I can learn a new skill without having received formal training. I'm excited to work with the talented professionals within your organization and learn from their experience too. So that's a great example because I also want to share with you all, it doesn't all have to be work related. If you're making an industry shift or this is your first full-time role and you have a ton of academic or leadership experience within your institution, even your undergraduate institution, it's okay to talk about a school or academic related experience. And I actually use this exact example when I was applying to grad school and I had grad school interviews. So this was still more recent. This was within 2 years of my experience. I wouldn't use that anymore because now I've had multiple full-time roles where I have lots of examples to talk about. But if this is your experience, you are more than welcome to talk about experiences you gained at school. Okay. And finally, why should we hire you? All right. So remember, this is your final impression. This is your chance to summarize and wrap up your experience in a bow. Leave a great taste in their mouth. So remember, what 3 things do you want them to remember about you? It goes back to the question, what do you want to be known for? You get to choose what your last impression is. So think about the 3 things that you really want them to walk away remembering about you. What sets you apart from other candidates? What experience or what personal stories, drives, motivations set you apart from other people applying for this job? And also keep in mind, is there anything that you didn't get the chance to share? You can answer this question and then tack onto it And one more thing that I think really makes me a great candidate and sets me apart that I didn't get to share is XYZ. That's fine to do too. But this is one that you absolutely have to know off the top of your head, because if you can't share why should they hire you, then how will they know, right? So again, confidence is really important here. You absolutely need to know the answer to this question. Okay. And the final question that's common is, what questions do you have for the hiring committee? So some examples could be, what do you enjoy most about working here? What are the next steps in the hiring process? How would you describe the company culture? What is the work schedule, in person or hybrid? What is your vision for this role? How would I collaborate with other team members on your team? These questions also have the power to really impress them. So think about a mix of questions. Of course, you're going to want to ask, what are the next steps in the hiring process? But also, what are questions that are going to be really impressive? Asking them, what is your vision for this role? What ideas, programs, initiatives would you want this person to implement? Or how do you see collaboration happening between my role and other people on my team? Those are high level questions, and employers always love when you ask those kinds of questions. So make it a balance of high level and the questions that you also really need to know. Like, what are the next steps in the hiring process? You should ask 3 to 5. Um, it really depends on the time frame. So if you notice that you're running out of time, you think maybe there might be someone interviewing after you because the time frames that they gave you were really close together when selecting your interview time, be mindful. You don't have to ask 5 questions, but I would ask 3. All right. And as we start to wrap up, some final things to keep in mind as you're preparing for the interview. Tailoring your answers is so important. In today's workforce, people are known for leaving companies for another position after 1 to 2 years. This is called job hopping. Now we're seeing with the competition in the current workforce, we're seeing job hugging, where people are hanging on to their jobs because there are more limited opportunities available, traditional opportunities. Um, so when they hire you, especially in a competitive job market, again, they want to know, since they went through all of these candidates, that they made the right decision. So tailoring your answers has never been more important. Remember, they desperately want you to be right for the role. The goal is actually not to reject you. They are just hoping that you are the answer to exactly what they've been looking for and that you impress them. So they want you to do well. And finally, the interview's not over until you send a thank you note within 24 hours. I would say within 2 hours. That shows that this is really top of mind. You know, it's important. Yeah, send a thank you note. And I listed all these icons on the screen. Indeed, LinkedIn, The Muse is one of my favorite career advice blogs. The Balance Money also has some information. But all of these sites can help you write a well-written thank you note. Make sure, instead of just going right to ChatGPT to writing out this note, you look at what is the professional standard whenever you're reaching out to employers. Do your research. Usually in thank you note, this means, of course, thanking them for their time and consideration, saying that you really enjoyed learning more about them and learning more about the role, and then stating 1 to 2 things that really stuck out to you from the interview, and then concluding with, thank you for your time and consideration. I would love the chance um, to interview in person if this was just a first round and you know what the hiring process looks like. And then closing out, I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, your name. So follow up, do your research, take advice from the experts and the professionals on these sites. Um, and yeah, tailor your answers. Employers want you to be right for this position. And finally, just a couple more things that I've learned. As someone who has really struggled to manage their anxiety and nervousness in interviews before, I'm sharing this with you all because it's normal and I'm not embarrassed to admit that, because again, everyone has experienced bad interviews before. Interviewing is a muscle, and I used to hate when people would tell me this, but the more you use it, the more natural interviewing becomes. Also remember, that the people on this team are not perfect. This job is not perfect. The company certainly isn't perfect. And so don't be discouraged if this job was your first choice. It feels like it's your dream job and it doesn't work out. There are many other opportunities out there. You can find them even in this job market. They exist. And so on to the next if it doesn't work out. And also, never interview for your dream job first if you can help it. If you can practice with a trusted mentor or coach, if you can apply for other roles that you know you might be overqualified for, just to get some interview practice in before you apply for that dream job. Also remember, it's not personal. I had an experience which really did not help with the nervousness and anxiety, where the interviewer asked me the same question twice. And I thought they weren't listening to me. And maybe they weren't listening to me. But sometimes interviewers make mistakes too. And let's say that as you're introducing yourself, you're saying you're telling them about yourself, and in that answer, you also start to share why you're interested in the role. If their next question is why are you interested in the role when you feel like you already answered that, it could be because for equity purposes, they have to ask every candidate the same exact questions no matter what. So if you already answered a question, you're gonna say something like, absolutely. So happy to expand more on that. I already shared that I'm interested in this role for XYZ reasons and some more detail behind that, or, just to expand more on that and talk a little more. It's okay. And then finally, if this is a Zoom or virtual interview, I've also had experiences where Zoom was glitching 3 minutes before the interview started, and that's why you log in early. But remember that Zoom issues pop up and it's okay. They understand, just make sure you're being communicative. And finally, consider working with a career counselor to identify what makes you stand out so you can feel as confident as possible in what you have to offer. And remember, everything you want is on the other side of fear. You have a choice to look at interview failure or situations where you felt like you could have done better, and you have the chance to look at it as a failure or a learning opportunity where you can improve for next time. So, really be diligent with that mindset. Again, work with a coach. Confidence is everything, and sometimes it takes taking risks and going through scary things like interviews to get what you really want, which could be an amazing job opportunity on the other side of that. So at this point, I want to open it up to questions and thank you all for attending this workshop interview with ease. This time is really yours. We have 12 minutes left before the end of the hour, so happy to answer any specific questions that you all have. Okay, one question. Thank you. This is super